Right, so today we're just going to prepare a few pots ready for putting trees into them. So I'm just going to wash a few, get them prepped, get them ready for the potting season to come. So just start with any one of them. So I've got a sponge. I've also got a scrubbing brush, another sponge with a scrubber on it. So let's get rid of the gloves. Pull the sleeves up. And we'll get ready to go. So let's just dump that one in the water, give it a bit of a swish around. Let's just get us off all the grubby marks. So these pots, I've just got them out of the garage. They've been hanging around in there for a few years. I haven't actually used them for a while, so they need a good old scrub just to get them ready for the new season. So this year we're going to probably be doing quite a lot of repotting of trees. There's lots and lots of work to do in the bonsai garden this year. Several trees are a little bit overgrown. I've got 3 or 4 trees where they're recovering from being stressed too much over the last few years. We had a really bad winter about 3 or 4 years ago, and a couple of the trees lost some of their ramification because the very small twigs got frozen in the winter. You had about a 2-week period where the temperatures were hovering around about 0 to -5. And obviously in those temperatures it was too cold to water any of the trees. It would have just frozen in the root ball, and that would have caused even more problems. That could have killed the trees. So we've got a couple that are in recovery, as I like to call it. I've potted them in deeper pots than normal. I've let the roots run riot. I've let some of the top growth run riot just to get some vigour back into the trees. They will all be shown at a later date. Just really waiting for some nice weather to come along to allow me to get into the garden for a day or so and get some real work done. I've been trying for the last 3 or 4 weeks to get out into the garden, but for various reasons of the weather and other things cropping up, I haven't been able to do much work this year. We've managed to do 1 repotting so far. We've done 1 starling of a very old tree of mine. I bought it when it was no more than about 3 or 4 inches tall. It's a yew tree. I did my very first gin on it. It is so tiny that you can't really see it now. And we styled that one yesterday, so in one of the future videos I'll show you what we've done to it. That one's been left for the last 4 or 5 years just to grow as it wants to grow. I haven't done any styling on it. I've just trimmed it back in the middle of the growing season just to keep it within bounds, but other than that I've let it put on as much growth as it wants. Consequently, when we did style it the other day, we had lots of ramification that had built up. There was plenty of excess wood to cut away. We had multiple choices of what we could do with the tree. It's looking quite nice actually at the moment. I can see it from where I am now. It's a little bit sparse on the top, but hopefully we'll get a bit of back budding on that particular section. But now it's going to go into proper training, put it into a nice deep basket weave, bonsai pot just to help it out with some more root growth. We've managed to chop quite a bit away, so we want to get that back again. These are going okay. These will clean up very nicely. That's going to be a bit of a scrub. Right. Oh. That's it. Get all the green off it. Some of these pots that I'm cleaning now were some of the very first pots I ever bought when I got into bonsai, so that's 35, 37 years ago, something like that. I was in my early 20s, I think, when I first started bonsai. So I've just turned 60 in the last couple of days, so that shows how long I've been doing it. I'm by no means an expert bonsai grower, it's just purely a hobby. I could have learnt a lot more in the years I've been doing it if I'd have put my attention to it, but as with lots of hobbies, you know, there's other things in life that come along. So I know a fair amount, but I'm by no means an expert. My biggest downfall is trying to grow pine trees. I don't have any success with white pines. There's only 2 pines in the collection at the moment. One belongs to my brother. That's a Scots pine, but that is a native tree, so that just looks after itself. But any of the Japanese pines, they don't seem to do very well in this garden for some reason. I've had a few over the years. I've probably had 10 different pine trees over the last 30 years, and they last for a few years, but eventually something happens to them and they die. I've got one tree of my own left, which again is showing signs of not liking its situation. I did a big restyle on it last year where I tried to crack one of the branches to bend it down to bring it into a semi-cascade tree. It didn't like that. That branch has now died off. So from the original tree there's only about a third of it that's alive at the moment. So I'm assuming it's going to die at some stage, and when it does, that'll be the last pine that I ever get into my collection. I know of a very famous bonsai artist who's very well known for growing hawthorn trees, and for some reason in his garden he can't grow maples, and that's in England. It's a bit further north in the country than where I live, so the weather conditions are slightly different. You get colder days and rainier days the further north you go in England. I'm sort of south central in the country, so not too far away from London, so it's quite warm in my part of the country. And also I live in what's known as the Thames Valley, and the valley has its own microclimate almost. The winds come along from the west and they travel all the way along the valley, and once the sun's out it tends to trap it in the valley, so you can get some really hot days. This is a lovely little Walsall ceramics pot that I got probably 15 years ago. One of the reasons I like it is this lovely sort of drip in the glaze here, just to get something a little bit extra, and you can see shades of it all the way around the pot. So rather than just being just a brown colour, you do get a little bit of variation on that. Now this one, we've taken the tree out of this one and repotted it up in another one, so I'm going to need a little bit of inspiration to find a tree to fit in there to go with the rock. That'll that'll be a project for this year. Right, so that looks like all the pots are washed. Right, let's put those away. Let's just dry my hands, and then we can get some mesh and put some mesh in the bottom ready for repotting. I was just looking at some of the mesh I've got in the greenhouse behind me, and I've actually found some mesh from the very first batch that I ever bought, and that goes back, as I say, for 35 years or so. It's amazing. It's amazing how well it lasts. You just keep on using it and using it and using it. Now some of these are already prepped with a piece of wire, some aren't. So you actually make like a little butterfly effect with a piece of wire, and you lock it in like that. Some people do it that way, some people have the butterfly wings underneath. It's all a personal preference really. So you start off with just a piece of mesh. I need some pieces of wire, bear with me. Right, so that piece of wire should do for everything. I just need some wire cutters, which will be in there somewhere. There we go. Right, so the way you do it, basically, probably get about, that's probably about a 5-inch length of wire, and I just twist it around my finger once, and then give it a twist. Twist it around. Whoop. Look at that. Too small. Right, try again then. So 6 or 7 inches then. Such a long time since I've done this. Yeah, practice. Right, there we go. So it's just a question of doing a couple of loops like that, and then you just lay them flat. Select a piece of mesh. Put it through a couple of the holes like that. Find a pot that needs it. In it goes. Number 2 done. Right, so now we know we need a longer piece of wire. Got a few pieces already. Right, so this particular one's going to need 2 pieces of mesh in it. It's also, as you can see, it's got 2 other holes in it there for tying the trees in. If, for instance, you've got a tree that's quite top heavy, or you've done a lot of root pruning on it, invariably they need tying into the pot so the wind doesn't blow them out. It's always a good idea for the first year to tie them in until the roots have established themselves. So most of my trees are tied into the pots, especially when they're repotted. Things like group forest plantings, there's ways of getting around tying every single tree in. If I do one of those this year, then obviously I'll show you the tricks of that. But you can put them into balls of clay that help them stand up individually. You can mound the soil up really high in the pot, and then that will help to hold the trees in as well. A little method that my brother and I tend to use sometimes is we arrange 3 or 4 trees in the pot in one go, and then we get strips of bamboo and we just tie them to the trunks of the tree and make a lattice above the soil level, just to hold them in. It looks ugly at first, but it is only a tree that's in training, so I'm quite happy with that. It looks almost like there's a fence running through the forest, to be honest. But again, it only needs to stay on there for a year or so, and then you can take that off and all the trees are secure in the pot. So this is going along nicely. This is another one that needs 2 pieces of mesh, but this one doesn't have any drainage holes in it, but it is quite a deep pot, so as long as you've got a fairly good root ball, and you pack the soil in around the root ball when you repot the tree, then that should hold it in place. And if it doesn't, another little trick I do is I'll get an extra long length of wire, tie it around the actual trunk of the tree, and then take it underneath the pot and back up. So you put the piece of wire around there and you wrap it around the tree, and you can hold it in that way. That one's already got its wiring, that's okay. That one needs a little bit of attention. Let's take that out. This, in fact, is the very first mesh that I ever bought, believe it or not. And you'll see that I've got 3 or 4 different styles of mesh now. So there's that one, this one's got slightly bigger holes, this one's got bigger holes still. I've got a black mesh as well. And for large pots with multiple holes in, what I tend to use sometimes is greenhouse shading. So you can put that along the bottom of the pot. So the only thing wrong with that is the roots tend to go through it quite easily, and it makes the repotting just a little bit more time consuming, because you have to get the roots out of the mesh basically. But it's good for putting into flower pots. If you've got raw material, some yamadori that needs to go into training pots, for instance, so we've got plenty of them around. Something like this, you put it into a flower pot like this, you've got lots of holes in the bottom, and a piece of that mesh just put in the bottom is ideal. One thing you can do when you put it in there is if you put about 1 inch or 2 of gravel on top, then that helps to stop the roots going into the mesh so much. The longer you leave it in, the more chance you've got of it going through the mesh, of course. But this is a piece of the black mesh that I use as well. That was just in the greenhouse with some shading basically, and I've commandeered it for the bonsais, as I do with lots of different pieces of garden equipment. When you do bonsai, you tend to buy something for one thing, and invariably you can find a use for it with your bonsai. So if you've got a partner that's a keen gardener, be prepared to have a few disagreements with them when you've taken their very best pair of secateurs to chop a tree, which has happened to me on many occasions. You start to use one thing and you get so used to using it you forget it's not even yours. So right, I need some more wire. Let's just grab some more. That's it. Oh, looks like it's going to start raining anytime soon. That's not good. I've waited all day to get out into the garden today. Just managed to get half an hour's filming done, and now it looks like it's going to rain on me, so this might end all of a sudden. So what I'm going to do before it rains is I'm going to make sure I get my tools covered over, just in case I need to make a run for it. So let's put those in there. Now that's a very expensive set of tools in there, so they're stainless steel. They're one of the top of the range you can get. I'm just going to put that in the greenhouse for the moment, just to give it some protection. And I'll grab my other set of carbon pipe steel ones. Just put them in there, get them out of the way. Right, so at least that's ready for a run if I have to make it. So back to making the rabbit ears, as I call them. Right, so this lovely little blue pot needs 2 pieces of mesh. There we go. Well, I think that was the first speck of rain. So this will have to be the last one, I think, for today, for the moment. Just get this done. And we have to call that quits. Which is a pity, but that's the way things go in England. Right, okay.